Well, hello everybody, welcome back. Today we are with Ralph Trinidad. Ralph, great to see you.
Very good to see you, George.
Ralph is a local lender, and we're going to be talking about the first-time home buyer's experience. So there are many questions that people either don't ask or aren't too sure of. Ralph, what do you ask for, or what is important to you as a lender when somebody's meeting with you for the very first time to actually make the financing processing a lot smoother?
Sure. So generally speaking, a lender is really interested in the potential borrower's last 2-year history of where they've been, right? So we're looking at their prior 2 years of residence.
Okay.
So we were going to ask them where they live today and where they've been over the past 2 years. And the same thing goes for employment history. So we want to make sure we understand where you've worked for the past 2 years, and we put together a proper timeline of that past 24 months for you.
Perfect. Yep. So you're looking at 2 years employment, 2 years address history. What else do you need?
So we would also require that we take some initial verification of what those wages are. So we would ask for the past 30 days of pay stubs. We would also ask for the past 2 years of W-2 forms, so just the stubs that you get from your employer, not the whole tax return, unless a borrower is self-employed. And in those cases, we would actually ask for the 1040s or full tax returns in those cases.
That's very simple.
And then we move into taking a look at credit together. I believe the mortgage application should be an educational one. So as I'm sitting across the desk from a client, we'll pull up the credit report so they understand the things that I'm looking at, and I try to give them my sort of synopsis of what I'm seeing on the credit report and point out some things that I believe are important in the credit making decision process.
Right. So how difficult is it to actually get pre-approved?
When you talk about difficulties, kind of all relative to the buyer's sort of personal situation, but I'll say that today is certainly an easier process to get pre-qualified than it was maybe 12 to 24 months ago.
Perfect. Now, what is the difference between a pre-qualification, a pre-approval, and a commitment letter?
Pre-qualification is something generally that is put together from a broker or lender based on a conversation where you're not really having the buyer send you any sort of documentation on proof of income or proof of assets. Generally speaking, the pre-approval will come post receiving some of that documentation. So you're proving what you talked about over the phone, submitting asset and income verification, and you're having qualified eyes look at that information. And then the commitment comes after that information is submitted to the lender, and the underwriter who's actually reviewing and approving the file has had an opportunity to review the file and issue a conditional approval, which means they'll issue you what your sort of a roadmap towards your final approval would be, and along with that conditional approval will come your mortgage commitment.
How long does it take for you to tell me that I'm actually pre-approved?
For me to tell you that you're actually pre-approved, we can do that process at one sit down. So
wow.
Yeah, I'd be able to look at information that we're gathering together, plug all numbers into my system. It's very simple math in some of these cases. We can look at a pre-approval as we sit down together.
What's a good question to ask a mortgage officer if you're looking for somebody to actually partner up with, who's going to help you with one of your biggest transactions that you'll probably ever make?
I would say that a common misconception out there is that you have to be employed with your current employer for a full 12-month term. That's certainly not the case. So you want to ask things about how much money you need out of pocket, how long I would have to have been with my current employer before I qualify, and ask questions about credit because there's a lot of misconceptions about you have to have perfect credit to buy a home. So I think those 3 things would be great starting points.
You're saying that I don't have to put 20% down as a first-time home buyer to
Absolutely
actually
not.
buy a house?
Absolutely not. So there's a lot of programs where you can put as little as 3% down, 3.5% down in some transactions, or some other transactions where you can get into the home with 0% down, and then you would have closing costs on top of that. And there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat when it comes to closing costs. Those costs can be paid for by a buyer, a seller, or in some cases even on the lender, on the lender side of the transaction as well.
Say I come to you as a veteran and want to buy a house. Is there anything different for a veteran than there is for?
Absolutely. So that's a great question. So the VA will allow for 100% financing, which means they will finance 100% of the purchase price of a property. So they don't require 3%, 3.5%, or as much as 20% as you would require in some other transactions.
So zero.
Zero.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. VA is more flexible. It's more about the veteran and the veteran's qualifications rather than neighborhood. Also, VA doesn't have minimum credit score requirements, so I have a couple lenders out there who will do a VA loan down to a 500 credit score.
Wow,
So
that's impressive.
phenomenal program out there available and readily available for our veterans.
So one last question for you. How much does it cost for somebody to actually meet with you for a consultation?
Zero. So the zero consultation fee to meet with me. I certainly just appreciate the consumer's time. I appreciate sitting down with somebody and talking to them about buying a home. And you know, in each of the cases where I sit down with somebody, I just really love helping out.
I love that. Another way to give back to the community.
Absolutely.
You're a good man.
Thanks, George.
Thank you so much for being here. It was great seeing you, and
Great to see you.
I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thanks,
the time.
everybody. Ralph Trinidad, thank you so much. See you soon.
Thank you.